June 1983, East Harlem, Manhattan. FBI agents crept into a small social club at 416 East 115th Street, the Palmer Boys Social Club. 990 square feet, owned by Anthony Fat Tony Solano, acting boss of the Genovese crime family. The agents carried electronic surveillance equipment, microphones, transmitters, battery packs. They planted bugs throughout the club, behind the bar, near the back table where Solano sat every day with his trademark fedora and cigar. Then they left before sunrise. Nobody noticed. For the next 2 years, Solano conducted business as usual. He held meetings with his capos, discussed gambling operations, settled disputes between mobsters from other families. He talked about the Concrete Club, the scheme where all 5 New York families controlled construction bids worth over $2 million. He complained about lack of respect from younger mobsters. He argued with other bosses about money. He spoke freely. This was his headquarters, his territory. The FBI listened to everything, and what they heard became the foundation for the most significant organized crime prosecution in American history, the Mafia Commission Trial. 8 bosses and underbosses convicted, 7 sentenced to 100 years each. The entire leadership of the New York Mafia destroyed in a single case. The Commission: How 5 Families Ruled New York. 1931, New York City. Lucky Luciano organized the meeting of the most powerful gangsters in America. The old bosses, the mustache Petes, were being pushed out. Younger, more business-minded mobsters were taking over. Luciano proposed a new system, the Commission, a ruling body made up of the bosses of New York's 5 families: Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese. They'd meet regularly to resolve disputes, approve major decisions, and coordinate criminal activities. No more mob wars, no more families fighting over territory. Everything would be organized, controlled, professional. For over 50 years, the Commission operated in the shadows. Law enforcement knew it existed, but proving it was impossible. The bosses were careful. They rarely met all together. When they did, they spoke in code. They never put anything in writing. By the 1980s, the Commission controlled billions of dollars in illegal operations: construction rackets, labor unions, gambling, loan sharking, drug trafficking. They owned New York, but they'd gotten comfortable. Fat Tony Solano held regular meetings at the Palmer Boys Club. Paul Castellano, boss of the Gambino family, discussed business in his Staten Island mansion. Tony Two Ducks Corallo, boss of the Lucchese family, conducted meetings in his Jaguar while his driver, Salvatore Avellino, chauffeured him around. The FBI saw their opportunity. The bugs, 5 devices that captured everything. The FBI didn't just bug one location, they bugged 5. First, Castellano's home on Todd Hill, Staten Island. The bug captured discussions about the Concrete Club, the construction bid-rigging scheme that became central to the prosecution's case. Second, Corallo's Jaguar. The car bug recorded thousands of conversations as Corallo conducted business while being driven around New York. He discussed labor racketeering, construction rackets, and commission decisions. Third, the Palmer Boys Social Club in East Harlem, Solano's headquarters. The bug captured him meeting with other bosses, discussing family business, and complaining about everything, from respect to money. Fourth, Cosa Nostra, the restaurant in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Gennaro, or Jerry Langella, acting boss of the Colombo family, conducted business at his favorite table. The FBI planted a bug in the ceiling directly above. Fifth, Ralph Scopo's union office. Scopo was a Colombo soldier who controlled construction unions. The bug captured him discussing the concrete club with construction executives. 5 bugs, thousands of hours of recordings. The bosses had no idea. The concrete club, 5 devices that captured everything. The most lucrative racket of the commission was concrete. In New York City during the 1980s, construction was booming. Office towers, apartment buildings, hotels, every major project required concrete. The 5 families created the Concrete Club. Here's how it worked. Any construction project requiring more than $2 million worth of concrete had to pay tribute to the mob. The construction companies would bid on projects, but the mob decided who won. The winning company would add a percentage to their bid, usually around 10%, and that money went to the families. The construction companies didn't complain. If they refused to participate, the mob-controlled unions would strike. Projects would stop. Delays would cost millions. So they paid. Castellano coordinated the scheme. Solano had hidden ownership in S&A Concrete Company and Transit Mix Concrete Corporation. Ralph Scopo controlled the Cement and Concrete Workers District Council, Local 6A. Between 1980 and 1985, the Concrete Club generated an estimated $50 million for the 5 families. The FBI bugs captured it all. Conversations about which companies would win bids, discussions about how to divide the money, arguments about percentages. The bosses thought they were untouchable. They'd been running these schemes for decades. Law enforcement couldn't prove anything. Then, Rudolph Giuliani became U.S. Attorney for the Southern New York District. The indictment, February 25, 1985. Giuliani announced indictments against 11 defendants. From the Genovese family, Anthony or Fat Tony Solano, 75 years old, acting boss. Gennaro or Jerry Lang, Langella, underboss. From the Gambino family, Paul or Big Paul Castellano, 70 years old, boss and commission chairman. Agnello or Neil Della Croce, 70 years old, underboss. From the Lucchese family, Anthony or Tony Dux Corallo, 73 years old, boss. Salvatore or Tom Mix Santoro, 72 years old, underboss. Christopher or Christy Tick Fernari, 62 years old, consigliere. From the Colombo family, Carmine or Junior Persico, 53 years old, boss. Ralph or Little Ralphie Scopo, 57 years old, soldier and union leader. From the Bonanno family, Philip or Rusty Ristelli, 65 years old, boss. Anthony or Bruno Indelicato, 38 years old, soldier. The charges: racketeering, extortion, labor racketeering, conspiracy, and in Indelicato's case, the 1979 murder of Carmine Galante. Giuliani told reporters, "This case charges that these bosses run a single criminal organization that is a major corrupter of our economic system." He called it the case of cases. Time magazine wrote, "Possibly the most significant assault on the infrastructure of organized crime since the high command of the Chicago Mafia was swept away in 1943. The mob bosses weren't worried. They'd beaten federal cases before. They had the best lawyers money could buy. They'd never talk, never cooperate. They didn't realize the FBI had recordings of their own voices discussing their crimes." The trial, September through November 1986. Before trial, 2 defendants were eliminated, and Yellow Della Croce died of brain cancer on December 2, 1985. Paul Castellano was murdered outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan on December 16, 1985, shot dead on orders from John Gotti, who wanted control of the Gambino family. Philip Rostelli was severed from the case to be tried separately on different RICO charges. 8 defendants remained: Salerno, Corallo, Persico, Santoro, Fanari, Langella, Scopo, and Indelicato. The trial began in September 1986 at the United States District Court in Manhattan. Judge Richard Owen presided. U.S. Attorney Michael Chartoff led the prosecution. He called 207 witnesses. The courtroom was packed every day, standing room only. This was the biggest mob trial in history. Persico decided to represent himself. He had legal advisor Frank Lopez assisting him, but Persico questioned witnesses and addressed the jury directly. In his opening statement, Persico spoke to the jury like they were his friends. Be wary of prosecution witnesses. They are being paid with your money and my freedom. They are powerful, not me. I'm sure after you hear all the evidence, you will acquit me. The jury listened politely. Then the tapes started playing. The evidence. Voices convicting themselves. The government played 150 tape recordings. Salerno and Corallo discussing construction rackets. Langella coordinating labor union control. The bosses dividing money from concrete contracts. One tape captured Salerno and Corallo complaining about younger mobsters who didn't show proper respect. I know you'll retire, Corallo told Salerno sympathetically. Salerno vented about an underling who called him fat too, not even using his full nickname. Corallo's solution? Shoot him. Get rid of him. Shoot him. Kill him. It's disgusting. Another recording caught Salerno reviewing a list of candidates to be made men in another family. When he noticed the list didn't include their nicknames, Salerno said, "I'll leave this up to the boss." Prosecutors seized on that line. Salerno referred to someone else as the boss. He wasn't really in charge, but it didn't matter. He was still running criminal operations. The defense attorneys had reviewed the evidence before trial. They knew their clients were doomed, so they tried a new strategy. They admitted the mafia existed. They admitted the commission existed, but they argued that membership alone wasn't criminal. This was shocking. For decades, mobsters had denied the mafia's existence under oath. Now, in open court, defense lawyers were acknowledging it. The defendants were furious. They believed it violated omerta. The code is silence. But their lawyers explained, you can't credibly deny the mafia exists when the jury is listening to you discuss it on tape. The defendants agreed, as long as they didn't have to personally admit anything on the stand. The star witness was Angelo Leonardo, underboss of the Cleveland crime family. He'd become a cooperating witness. He testified about commission meetings, how decisions were made, how the families operated. This was unprecedented. The highest-ranking mobster ever to testify against the commission. Under cross-examination, defense attorneys attacked his credibility. They pointed out his previous perjury convictions. Leonardo acknowledged his past lies. Right now, I'm telling the truth. The jury believed them. After 6 days of deliberation, they returned their verdict on November 19, 1986. Guilty on all 151 counts. All 8 defendants convicted. The sentences: January 13, 1987. Judge Richard Owen scheduled sentencing for January 13, 1987. The courtroom was packed again. Defendants, lawyers, prosecution, FBI agents, reporters, family members. Owen addressed the defendants one by one. Anthony "Fat Tony" Salerno, you have essentially spent a lifetime terrorizing the community for your financial advantage. 100 years. Carmine Jr. Persico, you are an upper member of the mafia echelon that lives and succeeds on murder and violence. 100 years. Antonio "Tony Ducks" Corallo, 100 years. Gennaro "Jerry" Langer, 100 years. Salvatore "Tom" Mix, 100 years. Christopher "Christy" Tix Finari, 100 years. Ralph "Little" Ralphie Scopo, 100 years. Anthony Bruno Indelicato, 40 years for murder. 7 100-year sentences, 1 40-year sentence. Total 740 years. Judge Owen recommended or be denied parole. The mob bosses sat stone-faced, no emotion, no reaction. After sentencing, the defendants were taken to a holding area. Their lawyers had arranged the final meal, Italian food and wine. They sat together one last time, eating, drinking, toasting. Tony Corallo raised his glass. Cent'anni, 100 years, the traditional Italian toast, meaning may we live 100 years. Salvatore Santoro laughed. I think it's time to get a new toast. Everyone laughed. Dark humor. They'd each just been sentenced to 100 years. Fat Tony Salerno raised his glass. Maybe I should tell him where the $5 million is buried. More laughter. Then silence. They finished their meal. The guards came. The bosses were taken to federal prison. None would ever be free again.
The aftermath. What one bug destroyed. The commission trial broke the New York Mafia. Fat Tony Salerno died in prison in 1992 at age 81, 6 years into his sentence. Corallo died in prison in 2000, age 87, 14 years into his sentence. Junior Persico died in prison in 2019, age 85, 32 years into his sentence. Santoro died in prison in 1997. Finari died in 2015 after being released on medical grounds. Scopo died in 1993. Langella was released in 2014 after serving 28 years. Only Indelicato, with the shortest sentence, was eventually released and is still alive. The 5 families never recovered. The commission stopped meeting. The organizational structure that Lucky Luciano created in 1931 was finished. John Gotti tried to revive Gambino family power, but was himself convicted under RICO in 1992. He died in prison. The Chicago outfit, Philadelphia mob, New England families all faced similar RICO prosecutions through the 1980s and 90s. The FBI had proven that electronic surveillance could destroy even the most careful criminal organizations. The mob had operated with near impunity for 60 years. The commission trial ended that in one case. 740 years in sentences, based primarily on bugs the FBI planted starting in June 1983. Vincent "the Fish" Cafaro, Salerno's right-hand man, turned informant shortly after the conviction. He revealed that Salerno had never been the real boss. Vincent "the Chin" Giganti had been running the Genovese family since 1969, using Salerno as a front. The FBI had been wrong about Salerno, but it didn't matter. He'd still committed the crimes. The sentence stood. Rudolph Giuliani used the commission trial to launch his political career. He became mayor in New York, then ran for president. The prosecutors, FBI agents, and investigators involved became legends in law enforcement. But the real breakthrough wasn't the lawyers or the agents. It was technology. Why the commission failed? For 50 years, the commission operated successfully. They resolved disputes, coordinated crimes, made billions. Their system worked because the bosses were careful. They spoke in code, they avoided paper trails, they never admitted anything. But they made one fatal assumption. They thought their regular meeting places were safe. The Palmer Boys Social Club was Solano's headquarters for over 20 years. He felt comfortable there. He spoke freely. Corallo thought his Jaguar was secure. Nobody could bug a moving car. He discussed business during rides around the city. Castellano thought his home was private. He held commission meetings in his dining room. They were wrong about all of it. By the early 1980s, the FBI had sophisticated electronic surveillance technology. Microphones small enough to hide anywhere. Transmitters that could broadcast conversations blocks away. Recording equipment that captured thousands of hours. The mob was still operating like it was 1950. The FBI was operating in 1985. That gap destroyed him. The commission trial proved that traditional mob caution, speaking in code, avoiding phone calls, meeting in person, was no longer enough. If the FBI could plant bugs in your social club, your car, your home, your union office, nowhere was safe. The bosses learned this too late. June 1983. The FBI planted a bug in the Palmer Boys Social Club. January 13, 1987. 7 mob bosses received 100-year sentences. 3 years and 6 months. That's how long it took for electronic surveillance to destroy the most powerful criminal organization in American history. The commission had ruled New York for over 50 years. They survived law enforcement crackdowns, internal wars, and federal investigations. But they couldn't survive technology. Fat Tony Solano sat at his back table in East Harlem for 20 years, conducting business, settling disputes, running a multi-million-dollar gambling empire. He never knew the FBI was listening. When the tapes played in court, Solano heard his own voice, discussing concrete rackets, complaining about disrespectful soldiers, dividing illegal profits. His own words convicted him. That's what the commission trial proved. In the modern age, there were no safe spaces. The places you feel most comfortable, your headquarters, your car, your home, those are exactly where you're most vulnerable. The FBI understood that. The mob bosses didn't. And that's why one bug in a 990-square-foot social club generated 740 years in prison sentences and destroyed the New York Mafia forever.